Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. First up in this episode, retail veteran Nadia Vattovaz, CFO and EVP Operations at Fire Flower, talks about operating across Canada during the COVID-19 crisis, powered by their purpose-built Retail 2.0 company, allowing them to roll out curbside and home delivery in lightning speed with fantastic results and awesome customer experience thanks to the power of their people. Next up, Forrester Research Vice President and top retail analyst Sucharita Kodali is back on the podcast, looking at the catastrophic retail results in the U.S. and what all retailers should be focused on today to ensure there is a tomorrow. Elite soccer player, trainer, athlete turned health scientist, entrepreneur, and DTC retailer Rachel Rapino is my final guest, taking lessons from the pitch and turning them into focus on the touchline of her CBD brand for retail. But first, let's jump right into my interview with Nadia from Fire Flower.
Nadia, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
You and I have known each other at different events and through Retail Council of Canada. But let's talk about you for a bit. Tell us about yourself, your personal, professional journey, what you do for Fire Flower, and then a bit about Fire Flower.
The history is longer than I otherwise would like. But having said that, I've worked in both large and small scale retail, and in the last prior to Fire Flower, I'm going to say in the last 15 years, I've been primarily focused on transformation. So I was the person you'd come to help fix, help understand issues that were occurring within retail functions in the organization, and created and executed plans to move the company into a position where they were actually positively contributing. So that was my history for the longest time, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But
some pretty big brands, right? The Canadian Tire, Holt Renfrew to come to mind, right?
Absolutely. And, all retailers at some point in time face these type of issues. So, it behooves them to act quickly on them in order to right-size the ship. So, I've spent quite a bit of time doing that, like I said, in large and small organizations. And I did a little bit of that in CPG as well, and quick service retail. So, I've spent a fair bit of time understanding what I would call the core competencies of an organization, the lever points to use in order to optimize performance. And I decided that I wanted to make a move when I was at Holt Renfrew, and I really wanted to focus on more than just transformation. And I ended up getting a call from a recruiting company talking to me about cannabis retail, and I'll tell you, it was never on the agenda for me. It didn't even pop up on my radar as an opportunity. But any retailer, and I know you can appreciate this so well, any retailer who has the opportunity to create not only a brand new brand, but a brand new Canadian brand in a new global market space. I mean, those kind of things don't come along very often, if ever.
Yeah, right.
So, I jumped at that opportunity.
Fire Flower, I believe, is headquartered in headquarters officially in Edmonton. You're in many, many provinces across the country. So give us a quick overview. You're in Alberta, Manitoba, Yukon, Saskatchewan, Ontario. Am I missing any?
No, you got them all, and we have currently 48 locations.
Well, let's talk about Fire Flower in terms of the operations. I mean, you're not unfamiliar with working across multiple jurisdictions in your past life, but as you span several provinces, different rules, how do you manage that complexity? And I guess some of that actually might have come in handy when Ontario did its pivot a couple of weeks ago and allowed curbside and then delivery to the doorstep, which I think was allowed in Saskatchewan, but you were already up and running. I think you're already up and running with that in Ontario, so you clearly moved quickly. Tell us about just operating in these multiple jurisdictions and the benefits, or if there's any drawbacks to or complexities that you deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. If we just take a step back, the interesting part about Fire Flower and why I joined the company was, I had, over the course of my experience, had seen multiple retailers who were strong at brick and mortar really struggle with becoming what we call a retail 2.0 company. And that really is about being a tech-enabled retailer that really seeks to service its customers in the way that they want to be serviced, be it brick and mortar, be it curbside pickup, be it delivery. And so the compelling part about joining this company was really, it was purpose-built that way right from the beginning. So everything that we do in terms of our tech development, seeking to understand our customer, their preferences, has really been based on creating a platform from the beginning that's set up to be able to do so. So when we started, over the course of time, we've consistently built all of our platforms to encompass those requirements. So for us, in the age of COVID, that has really worked in our favor. When there was an announcement about the ability to do curbside pickup and possibly delivery in Ontario, for us it was pretty easy to look towards our Saskatchewan operation where we can actually do delivery there. We weren't doing curbside pickup at the time, but we were doing pickup in store, so order online and pick up in store. So we basically mobilized pretty quickly, did a 2-day test in Saskatchewan, and then deployed in Ontario. And we were able to kind of get out some kinks and deploy pretty quickly. And it's been pretty successful. We've had a couple of downtimes, but very minor in nature, and we are going gangbusters in Ontario. So, we've always been what I would call a very agile organization and built on technical infrastructures to support that agility, as well as pretty strong, what I would call service, in-house brick-and-mortar service structure. So between the two teams to pivot quickly is what we do best.
Well, clearly, getting home delivery up and going in a matter of days is, congratulations. That's not an easy effort. And you're in 2 cities, right? I think you're in Kingston and Ottawa today, operating today in Ontario. One of which is my hometown, Ottawa. So you're downtown on the market. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're not yet in Toronto, but I think would you be expanding into the Toronto market? Of course, Ontario has just opened up a lot of licenses. So is it your intention to open up at some point in the Toronto market?
Absolutely. So we have, we intend to maximize the number of licenses in Ontario. So we'll get to the 10. We are pretty close to construction completion on several sites in Ontario, and including the Toronto area that we'd be looking to complete once that construction is up and running again in Ontario. Right. And then, of course, we'll maximize to the 30 to the extent possible, and we'll move pretty quickly on that.
Segue over to, or let's pivot, so to speak, over to COVID, operating in COVID, the world of COVID now and for many months to come. What and how have you changed the way you operate based on that? I've spoken to you before and to many others about how important the associates are in terms of the engagement. It's such a personal sell. How do you operationalize that in the world of the COVID crisis?
So COVID has been an interesting litmus test for us on a couple of fronts. Number one, obviously, is the tech front, and the integrity and the capabilities of our systems, and we've seen that litmus test has been successful. It hasn't come without its challenges, but at the end of the day, we've been able to move pretty quickly on that. What is really interesting to me is, I know that our staff, our in-store staff, is bar none our secret sauce. So you can have tech, you can have so many capabilities that are important to a future-looking 2.0 focused retailer. But if you have brick-and-mortar stores, customer service is mission critical and key. The success that we've had in being able to be agile, as well as really servicing customers that are concerned, that want access to their cannabis but want to be safe, the way to really do that is through a labor force that really is second to none. And so every day, and I meet with my leadership team every day for our regular call, it is without a doubt the teams out there in the field that have really risen to the occasion, because it matters to them that we battle the black market. It matters to them that their customers get their cannabis and the product that they need. And this is fundamentally who we are. So in the age of COVID, you can imagine that brings that out further in our people. And so I'm very proud of our field teams, because we clearly identify the right people for our brand and the right people for our customer.
Well, let's talk about how you position yourself in the marketplace from a competitive perspective. So, in Calgary and Edmonton, there's lots of choice of retail cannabis stores relative certainly to Ontario. How is it that you position yourself so that people make you the destination versus the other choices they might have in the retail cannabis space?
I think it's a couple of ways, and of course I'll bring it back to our people. We're constantly reevaluating and evaluating ourselves out there, whether it's through metrics that we have internally, secret shopper, social media, et cetera. We're constantly evaluating how we're perceived out there in the marketplace, and I think that it consistently comes down to the quality of our staff. And, when you want help and when you want to be taken care of, Fire and Flower is a clear choice for people. We get that feedback all the time, and we, of course, always iterate on the feedback that we get. So I think that we are very, very proactive in that way. I have a team of people who lead our field operations that are constantly in tune with that, and we hold them to that in terms of what their job is. So, and I also think that it's very much about, and this is not unlike any other retailer out there. You try and serve people in the way that they want to be served. So, to the extent that we can do things like click and collect. So, we've launched several months ago our Fast Lane program under our Spark Perks membership program, and we have almost 100,000 users, our members, in the system. And
wow, fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's great. And that's one of the things that COVID has done, too, certainly, is we had pretty good membership before, but it's ramped up significantly so that we have a very active customer base of information that we draw on. What type of products do they buy? When do they buy them? Where do they buy them? And how do they buy them? And so we constantly iterate on that to make sure that we're reaching our customers in the way that they want to be, reached out to, and they want to be serviced. So I think Spark Perks really is a differentiator for us as well.
So you mentioned product. Let's talk about product for a minute. How do you articulate the brand Fire and Flower in terms of your assortment? I mean, when we started the journey in retail cannabis, you were pretty much retailers are selling what they could get. There's a shortage of supply. Now you've got choice, whether it's in dried flower or 2.0 product. Now you get to start making choices, right? And representing the brand in terms of the product you offer. How do you conceptualize that or think about that with the merchants at the store level in terms of what product you carry? Because you can carry everything, but are you starting to think about positioning the brand by the products and the assortment that you offer?
Yeah, it's I'd say it's been the last, call it 4 to 6 months, really, notwithstanding 2.0 products, that we are able to see a wider assortment, a more reliable assortment and offering out there in the marketplace. LPs have really risen to that occasion. What we're now able to do, especially because we have a pretty robust understanding of through our Hi-Fire digital platform, we have a pretty good understanding of what people buy when they buy it, and we do that by store. So we look at it on a store-by-store basis, a regional basis, and we constantly iterate. I spend a fair bit of time with the team delving into, now that we have better product choice out there and that we can make those deliberate choices, as you say, what do our customers want, and are we meeting it? Are we meeting that in size formats, in terms of flower offering, as well as other product categories, and developing a replenishment and planning system around that. And we're doing that at a custom level in-house. Because this market, this type of retail is a little bit different, where I would say it's closer to convenience to a certain degree, where you're ordering this stuff on a weekly basis. So you have the luxury of being able to iterate pretty quickly, do promos, and keep newness going constantly, and you're kind of able to see the data. So for us, being able to do that quickly, plan the next week's assortment accordingly, and do the buy all within a couple days is, I think, going to be a real competitive advantage.
One last question about the assortment of the product itself. Are you finding, I know I can see the demand overall for retail cannabis is up fairly significantly. Are the LPs and your distributors, are they keeping up? Are you finding your supply being in pretty good shape on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis?
Yeah, we haven't seen any issues with supply during the COVID. Since COVID started. If anything, I'm kudos to the LPs to make sure that product is consistent. They are delivering. I think they've been pretty aggressive about that, which is great. I think when it comes to where I'd like to see a little bit of evolution is the offering, particularly from the perspective of, on a flower basis, we're seeing more of a focus towards the value-based product. And I think that that's great. We've been asking for that for quite a while, and we're definitely seeing that. If we're going to compete against the black market, the ability for customers to buy product that is cost effective, and there's a real value proposition there, I think is important from the perspective of competing with the black market. When it comes to kind of newness, freshness, and breadth and depth, we definitely would like to see the edibles being enhanced a little bit more. There's a lot of chocolate out there, and clearly customers do like the chocolate offering. Certainly, we'd like to see more from the gummies and the other edibles categories. We're seeing 510 cartridges in the supply for that really ramping up. That is a very compelling product for consumers. And certainly, although beverages isn't a big category, right now there's really only one LP that has a product out there. We would definitely like to see a little bit more of that to offer a better breadth. To offer more of an assortment to our customers for sure.
We started talking about your transition from traditional brick and mortar into the retail cannabis space. So I just wanted to tap into your advice for any retailer who might be listening and say, hey, maybe now's a good time to get into the retail cannabis space. It's in most, if not all provinces, what we now call the essential service, which is funny, right? Illicit to essential in 18 months. When you made the move, and you made it for very strategic reasons, a chance to build something, the chance to build something unique in Canada, build a brand, those are things that are hard to come by. So again, I think it's an attractive proposition. What surprised you the most, either positively or otherwise, and by way of offering advice for anyone who's thinking about making a move into the retail cannabis space?
Well, listen, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. And that's understandable. Although it's not a brand new market, there are many provinces trying to figure their way through this issue. And I think the most challenging aspect as a retailer comes from where the regulatory environment in a particular province is. So, somebody might be ready with a store and they have built out their store, they have done everything they needed to do according to code, but let's say, for example, licensing takes a little longer, or a significant amount of competition comes in, or regulations change. And, you can't necessarily pull the typical retail levers like transfer of product, like return of product that you would be able to do in an otherwise normal or so-called normal retail environment. These are all things that are very real challenges. Things like securing bank debt. I mean, I don't know if you saw today, we are the first purpose-built retailer in Canada to secure secured financing through a regular bank.
Congratulations! That's a big achievement. That's a big achievement, right? That speaks well to both your background and to some confidence in the industry, I think.
It's huge, and I'd like to take all the credit for that, but I have a great team who was able to work through all the issues. And we have a great lender in ATB Financial as well. They really have taken the time to understand the market. They've taken a very judicious approach to this, and we really like that. We view all we want is to be taken as a regular retail business that has its particular nuances, but that, we're held accountable to things like four-wall EBITDA, to making sure that we meet our covenants, et cetera. All these things are very important in terms of being a legitimate business. So, to your original question on, what would I say to people? I'd say, look, there are a lot of nuances to this retail business from a regulatory, financing, perspective, and certainly it's challenging nowadays for the cannabis industry given all the issues that have occurred in the last year to impact markets. So it is definitely not for the weak of heart. You have to be able to have your ducks in a row in terms of having a strong balance sheet or the ability to have a strong balance sheet and maintain it. And you definitely have to be able to lever up and down. And for us, the differentiator has been being well capitalized, but also having ancillary businesses. We have a distribution business in Saskatchewan, and that business is doing well. And it allows us to iterate and learn and be the platform for growth in other parts of the country. And then we have the Hi-Fire business. I have 23 developers that we leverage constantly to develop not only our internal platforms, but commercialization beyond. So that we're not just relying on what I would call pure play retail.
Well, it's a diversified, well-built platform, so congratulations to you and the entire team. Tell us about if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about yourself or Fire and Flower, what and how can they do that?
Sure. I encourage everybody to go to our website, fireandflower.com, and, to learn a little bit more about not only us, but Hi-Fire as well, and understand sort of the value proposition of Hi-Fire.
Well, Nadia, thanks so much for being on the Voice of Retail podcast. It's a real treat chatting with you, and these are such interest. You're in an interesting part of the retail business in an interesting retail time, so I think you got your wish. You wound up in an interesting place doing great stuff. So congratulations again, and thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail.
Thank you very much for having me. I do consider myself a very lucky person.
Hi, it's Jim Okamura, partner at McMillan Duo and co-founder of Global E-Commerce Leaders Forum. We are very excited to announce the latest extension to the Global E-Commerce Leaders Forum events, the Global E-Commerce Tech Talks podcast. In partnership with Kent Allen, Scott Silverman, and our host, Michael LeBlanc, we'll be debuting and discussing custom proprietary research designed specifically for global e-commerce retailers and talking to e-commerce industry leaders around the world to help us sharpen our saw blades when it comes to doing business across borders. Check out the 1-minute trailer episode available now. Apple and Spotify Plus, all major podcast platforms with episodes debuting every 2 weeks.
Sucharita, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. First and foremost, how are you? Safe? Everyone good?
Yeah, everyone is good where I am. So thank you for asking. My company is well, family as well. So no complaints right now.
For the listeners that you've been on 3 times as recently as January, but for the listeners who may not have heard or may not know of you or Forrester, give us a quick overview of yourself and what you do at Forrester and Forrester, the company itself.
Yeah, I'm a retail analyst at Forrester. So I work with retailers, brands, and technology companies that support those retailers. I have been at Forrester since 2005. Forrester is a technology research company, and we service executives at companies that are looking at basically everything from digital transformation to any major technology decisions that they may have. So that's my company, and that's what I do there.
So the last time you and I were in the same place at the same time was in New York City and at the big show. And, I remember talking about it, which seems, by the way, like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away today.
It does.
It does. But we were talking about trends and what was going to happen in retail. And I was just reading some comments you had in the New York Times about retail results in March described as pretty catastrophic. And you see April as probably being the worst ever, according to this article. And I can't imagine Canada is any different from an order of magnitude perspective. Tell me what you saw in the data that led you to describe it in such a way.
Well, what is the only reason that April is going to be worse than March is because you had a full month of social distancing versus March, where most of the shutdowns and the social distancing started around March 16th in the United States. So that at least allowed for a couple of weeks of normalcy in the first part of March. So that's the only difference. But the real issue is that this is just unprecedented. We've never had forced closures of businesses for as long as we've seen it. This has just never happened before. Retail is an industry that never sleeps. This is an industry where somebody is open for Christmas. Somebody is open on every holiday. And to not only be closed, but to be closed for an indefinite period of time is just insane. And it is a level of forecasting we've never seen. It's a shock to supply that we've never seen. So that is why you're seeing the numbers that you've seen. This is even nothing like 9/11. It's nothing like 2008, 2009 during the last recession. Those were either, in the case of 9/11, it was a regional shock. In the case of 2008, it was an economic recession that was a slower slide down. This was an overnight turning off of essentially all businesses that were not in food, gas, or pharmacy. And that is just what is unprecedented.
And I've been using the analogy, it's like a giant circuit breaker in the world has been thrown. And I imagine for people in your position, you're used to forecasting and have some comfort in, I figure out from the numbers and my experience what happened. But we're all in such uncharted territories, man. I'm running out of adjectives, right? You call it insane. I mean, I'm just starting to run out of adjectives. But let's think about, if we can, some implications knowing what we know. Do you think, for example, that the COVID crisis will accelerate Amazon's dominance of the online retail marketplace, or will the mass adoption of online, and we're seeing that in grocery just overnight, right? We're seeing grocery numbers in the 10, 12, 14%. I don't know exactly what they are, but they're pretty high. And Amazon's not that strong in grocery. And I've been seeing, when I look at what's Amazon, I see as much chaos as I see other places, actually. Do you think this will is more cement? They have such a dominant role in online commerce, but are people going to turn to all those other options and start exploring a wider variety? How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, we will have to wait and see what Amazon's numbers actually turn out to be. They'll be reporting their Q1 numbers, I think, at the end of the month of April, so it's not too far away. My hunch is, though, that they had a blockbuster last several weeks, because they are a place where consumers just habitually know to go to. So regardless of how bad the customer experience may be right now because products are out of stock or they're taking too long to deliver, I don't know that people care. And I think that what is going to happen is I think that there's also a delta between what they've often said and what they're doing. So I think that they've put a lot of press out there that, they're only focusing on essential goods, but lo and behold, you order a non-essential good, and in many cases, it still shows up at your door pretty quickly. So
it's been my experience. I mean, I put an order in. With personal experience, I was running out of a few spices, and it said, "Well, we'll deliver them May 15th." I'm like, "That's fine," and they showed up this morning. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because I'm actually basing my replenishment on when they say they're going to deliver, because before you could set your watch by it. So it's so interesting, right? So
right. Now, what is fascinating is that it was just like 6 weeks ago that everyone was like, 2 days is a standard, and you have to have complete transparency, and you absolutely have to compete to be the fastest and the quickest. And this is great
Nobody
evidence.
cares anymore.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is great evidence that, it's just, it's really what the competitive set has to offer. And that's part of the reason that, by the way, online grocery has always, until now, really struggled, is because they, kind of that great offering certainly didn't really exist before. And it's questionable whether there's even a great offering right now. But I think that people are getting a little ahead of themselves with respect to the future of online grocery. That's for sure.
Well, it feels like two kind of competing things are going to happen. One is that new consumer habits are going to be created. If you look at a country like South Korea, with which online grocery is in the 20s, because repetitive great examples or great experiences caused more people to shift online. You're right. Right now, the experience is not great. I don't think it's going to stay here, but I think it's going to, if the water, let's say it's 10, 12% today, I don't think it's going to go back to 1, 2, or 3%. It's going to the water line's going to settle, but a little higher is kind of what I was thinking about online grocery and some of these other areas.
Yeah. I think that that's a fair characterization. I mean, I don't think anybody who thinks it's going to go from, 4 to 40% overnight is probably, that's wishful thinking, but it is more about if you go from 4% to you skip a year and you get to maybe, kind of 6% quickly.
Do you think this is going to shake out to be the great bifurcation or the great acceleration? So I've been talking to a bunch of folks around trends that existed before are just going to be accelerated, just like you just described for online grocery, but other things as well, maybe live streaming by brands that will just skip ahead a couple of years. But the other thing is this bifurcation where the strong will continue to get stronger. The big will continue to get bigger because they're the ones who have the capital to survive this and the resources to deliver in the tougher days. Do you have hope for Main Street retail and mid-sized retailer that they can leverage some technologies and be at least competitive in all this?
I hope so. I definitely, we're seeing more companies invest in and seeing some success with curbside pickup, contactless pickup, and that's something that had always been talked about but never actually executed. I actually think one of the lasting behaviors, I hope is actually one of the lasting behaviors, is that we had to move faster than we've ever moved before, and you just don't have time to think and go through 85 different committees and get approval from 55 different levels of people in order to get things done. And I hope that in the same way that people are thinking like, oh, I can now work from home, it's not obligatory that I have to go into the office, or
suddenly it works, right? Suddenly all these things can happen.
Exactly. And I think speed of decision making, I hope, is also a byproduct here, that kind of all of these layers of decisions were just bureaucracy that got in the way. And hopefully that becomes an outcome of this. I mean, but ultimately, you know what, Michael, it's the same reason that work from home had never taken off in the first place. It's not that it's not efficient or that people don't like it or that it's not. The reason that it doesn't happen more is because bosses don't like it. I mean, you look at Yahoo, it was Marissa Mayer that told everybody to come back into the office and stop working.
Get back in the office.
I mean, it's a CEO level decision that if a CEO decides they do or they don't like something, that's going to determine what happens, not whether or not it's the right decision or whether it's an efficient decision.
Let's pick up on your thread around adoption of technologies. What technology or service, you mentioned curbside, and that may be it, but what technology or service that you love or like but didn't have strong adoption by retailers do you think will now fast forward in terms of implementation?
Well, I think that just in general, any type of digital touch point, whether it is, if you don't have ordering, it's definitely ordering. If you don't have great inventory management, it's now much stronger inventory management. If it is that you don't have access to an endless aisle, you now have to figure out how can you get access to an endless aisle. So I think that it's not so much there's some new crazy technology out there. It's not like, all of a sudden people are adopting VR now in the middle of the pandemic. But what I think it is it's been a long list of things that we've had over the years that companies have been slow to adopt, that now they're forced to adopt it. And they just don't have any other choice, because this is the only way that you're able to have sales. And I think that a lot of the long list of omni-channel, there are like 15 things on omni-channel fulfillment wish lists, of which most of the things haven't even been implemented at most retailers. Now is the chance. It's ship from store, it's ship to store, it's fill from store, it's kind of visibility across your different channels, visibility further down your supply chain. One of the things that I think is still an opportunity, one of the biggest sources of frustration in grocery right now is that people don't know when things are in stock. And one of the questions that I have that we don't know why it's not been made visible is, if something's on a truck that is on the way to your store, why don't you know that? Because those things are on a schedule, and that a truck is going to arrive at a certain time. What merchandise is going to be on that truck because there's a manifest that somebody has visibility into, and how long it takes to unload a truck and get the merchandise on the floor. Why can't that be exposed to customers, particularly for some of these fast-moving consumer goods?
Interesting. It makes me think of adoption of technologies like RFID, to just name one. But I think you're right. The overall wholesale checklist that has been languishing far too often will be accelerated. Give me three things retailers can and should do today to make sure there is a tomorrow for their business.
Preserve cash, and preserve cash. I think that that's going to be the single biggest differentiator between those who make it and those who don't, is those that have the capital to be able to withstand the fluctuations of the time now. I think that there are some other things that you could do. You certainly can look to the degree that you can, especially if you are in a non-essential business and you may have employees that have downtime. To look to retrain some of those employees or upskill some of those employees. The most brilliant thing that I saw, tragic but smart, was the CEO of a little retailer called Beta, which has a partnership with Macy's, but basically it's in consumer electronics that are in a consignment model in a live demonstration for a setting. And
Love Beta was in their store in Hudson Yards in January.
Yeah. And it's a great little store. Unfortunately, they had to furlough all of their employees. But one of the things that they did in the course of that furlough is they basically gave everybody free coding classes. So that is a really, really smart outcome. If we can come out of this with a whole bunch of programmers, that actually would help all of our economies. So that's actually a really smart way to take advantage of the downtime and the kind of the loss of income that is that's happening right now.
It's interesting because there's a government program here in Canada that pays up to 70% of your employees' wages. And some are taking advantage of that, even though most of their stores are still closed. Some are repurposing them for a warehouse. But it really is an intriguing point. Let's keep them on the payroll, but let's start doing retraining. It's a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
Last question: 3 big winners and 2 big losers in the U.S. retail market by the end of 2020.
Well, I don't think that is that difficult to foresee. The only companies that are really winning right now are either grocery warehouse clubs or pharmacies and some alcohol stores. So 3 big winners will easily be a large grocer like a Kroger, a large warehouse club like a Costco, and of course Walmart. And Target and Amazon should be pretty strong winners as well. Losers will be those that are already really, really weak and were not well positioned even going into this pandemic. Sears and JCPenney, no doubt.
Yeah, JCPenney's missed on that payment, and I think Neiman Marcus has as well, right? They're kind of in the 30-day watch period.
These are definitely
for their liquidity, right?
For sure, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see, because this goes back to the cash comment, which is, you just have to be able to make it through. And I mean, one of the things that we're seeing to preserve cash is we're seeing a whole lot of tenants just not even paying their bills, just not paying.
I guess, it'll be interesting when we see the experience of retail and what that looks like over the next 18 months when you got to stay 6 feet away from everyone. Well, listen.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have some treatments in the near future. That's a best case scenario.
Well, yeah, I think massive testing first, and then some kind of vaccine over the course of time. Right? We'll see. And the one thing I do know is that I want to keep in touch, because as this evolved, I can't think of anybody better to help me and help listeners understand what's happening. So once again, Sucharita, thanks so much for being on the Voice of Retail again. And I look forward to seeing you in person and continue to work together. And thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, Michael.
Hi, this is Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Join us on our brand new podcast, The Food Professor, together with Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast. We'll look at the hot issues in the food service, grocery, and restaurant industries, discuss proprietary industry and consumer food-related research. Check out fresh new ideas and talk about half-baked strategies. Available on iTunes, Spotify, all the major podcasting platforms, debuting in May.
Rachel, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's the same as I was yesterday, just working from home, keeping things pretty low-key these days.
Tell us about yourself, your personal, professional journey right up to being CEO and head coach, I see, of Mindy, and about yourself and the company.
So, I pretty much come from sports and health background through and through. I got my undergrad in science. I got my master's in science. I obviously played soccer at the University of Portland, won national championship, played professionally for a year. I was riddled with injury, which that is what sort of, spawned my love for health and the human body. I was actually a finance major and a marketing major. And then I had my first injury my sophomore year of college. And, after going through the rehabilitation process, I immediately switched majors and majored in biology and kind of never looked back. But once I finished playing, I, dove into the medical field. I thought I wanted to go into medicine, but then realized that I actually am much more passionate on the preventative side of things and trying to help people live their best life, pain-free, balanced mentally and physically. And so I wanted to switch to the preventative side. So then I went and got my master's in health and exercise, and tying in nutrition, the mental wellness and mindfulness, as well as exercise science. And so I graduated with my master's degree in 2015, and I built a training business, training definitely more elite soccer players. Rather than kind of just the everyday person. I had a pretty specific niche because of my connections in the soccer world. And I built a robust training business in the Pacific Northwest, and I trained the University of Portland women's soccer team. And then my sister, Megan Rapino, and I built a national training business and brand. And then we also had an e-commerce business. We had a lifestyle apparel line selling, hats, tees, sweatshirts, hoodies, bags. So I had experience on the e-commerce side and just building a brand and a community of people. And then I obviously, had the sports science experience. And then I met Kendra Freeman and my whole world changed. And now here I am with Mindy. I closed the doors to Rapino SC December 31st. We started Mindy last January, and I sort of took my e-commerce skills as well as my knowledge of exercise science and health and nutrition into Mindy.
It's a story I often hear when I talk to folks in the cannabis CBD space, that there's a deep intersection between the personal and the professional, and you've just articulated a similar one, right? Your experience in injury and recovery leads you down to a couple of different paths, one of which is the science, and then second is this company. So tell me about the company. Tell me about the organization. What do you sell? What's your product? And what's the brand essence and insight behind it?
Yeah. So Mindy was a pretty easy segue for me because, again, we're dealing with whole plant, which is what I champion anyway in my life. Non-synthetic, I try to be as holistic as possible. So, the only thing new for me was just cannabis. I really hadn't used much of cannabis products and didn't really know much about the plant as well as the industry. So there's a lot of learning, still a lot of learning, because as anyone that's in this industry knows, it's changing. It seems like every day. But we sell hemp-derived recovery tools, and we wanted to launch with hemp because it's federally legal. And with my e-commerce experience and experience building a brand, as well as Brett Swager, who's our creative director, we just felt like that would be a great segue. And we wanted professional athletes in the fold from the very beginning. And obviously, they cannot have a public relationship with a cannabis brand if it's not derived from hemp. So we have a CBD only line. And typically, we would not encourage someone to only use CBD compared to whole plant like full spectrum or broad spectrum. But because we have professional athletes on our team, they can only use CBD products because WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, has only deemed that one cannabinoid as legal. Obviously, THC is a banned substance, but they also are saying that every other cannabinoid in the hemp plant is also a banned substance. So we had to isolate the CBD, and that is our CBD only line that we've come to market with. And then we very soon actually are launching a full spectrum line as well. So we're going to expand the hemp line, and then I think next year we'll probably launch a cannabis line.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, you've touched on it in a couple of ways, even the way you phrase the team. And it's clear, and I wanted to explore it a little bit, that your transition from varsity, professional athlete, coach, trainer, into launching and operating a brand and business. You talked about experience in DTC and e-commerce and training. So clearly you've brought your background with you into the organization. I even looked on your site. You've described team members as positional players as well as their roles. It's really fun. So tell me about how being an elite athlete prepared you for running a business and dealing with what you have to deal with and growing a business.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, and I would say a lot of other professional athletes would probably agree with this, there's like three main, very transferable skill sets. The first one is passion. When you're a professional athlete, or when you're just, an avid exerciser or whatever, like that takes a lot of passion in what you do. And I think, that definitely is something that has carried with me in my career. If I don't really love what I'm doing or believe in the mission or the product that I'm selling, it's really difficult for me to get behind something 100%. So I think it's the passion and leading with your heart, which a lot of athletes definitely, I think, resonate with. And the second one is teammates. I definitely have never been someone that wants to be a loner or wants to do things on my own. I am a firm believer that you cannot run a business on your own. You have to get the right people and you have to put them in the right place and kind of get out of their way and let them do their thing. And so building the right team and trust in your teammates is the second thing. And then I would say the third, I probably, equally as important component is just learning how to fail. When you're an athlete, you make a lot of mistakes and you probably lose more games than you win, or you strike out more than you actually hit a ball. And I think truly being an athlete, like you're just so comfortable with messing up and making mistakes and then just learning from them and moving forward. You kind of just like don't get fazed with it. Whereas I've noticed with some other, people that I've been associated with in business or just, contacts that or friends that I know, they really struggle with that sense of like failure. But when you're, in the business world, especially an entrepreneur, like you have to be prepared to just learn a ton from your mistakes. And so for me, those are the three probably like most critical components that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's many more, but those definitely have stuck with me, being an athlete to now being an entrepreneur.
Now you mentioned your sister earlier in the conversation, Megan. She has a pretty big public profile, and I see she's on your board of directors. What role does she play? Looking at your Instagram, you're clearly close. Personally, what kind of role does she play, and what does she bring perspective-wise to your company?
I got to give Meg a lot of props because Meg really is the one of her and Kendra really are the ones that brought me into this industry. Kendra, obviously, just as a business partner and a wonderful person, and her experience and just teaching me about the industry. And then Megan as a consumer of cannabis. I really didn't learn about cannabis and didn't really see people using cannabis until, Meg started using it, as well as some other athletes, as a recovery tool. And that was really when it opened my eyes and kind of flipped my perspective of cannabis isn't just for stoner culture. A lot of people are using it as a pain relief option or an inflammation option or an option to help them sleep. So she definitely,
and you both have in your line, you both have topicals and ingestibles, right? So you've got a broader line that goes after each of those components, right?
Yeah, definitely. We kind of sell the full gamut of recovery tools, but Meg kind of introduced me to it. And when I told her our business venture, of course, she, jumped all on it. She was so excited. And I mean, that makes sense, right? If you're someone who loves cannabis products, then you want a built-in pipeline. So she, said right away that she would help, however we needed. And, we were raising money, so it's not like we needed funding, but we did need her support. Obviously this was pre-World Cup. Now post-World Cup, she's become this global icon. Yes. She was still very famous before, but it's worked out really well. And we did not plan for the 2019 World Cup to, for the results, for it to end the way that it did. But she jumped on as our first athlete ambassador, which was huge. She was our first endorsed athlete. And she is our advisor. She's on our advisor board. So she helps with R&D, product feedback, testimonials. She connects us with other athletes or business leaders or stakeholders. And she's really good at building a brand, and she has a really good sense of building a community. And, so she definitely helps us with our brand for sure.
I listened to an interview with her with Kara Swisher from the Vox Media Network, and so articulate and so passionate, and he really encapsulates all those things you've been saying. It's a great interview. So you didn't get into, and you've already talked about how you got there, this intersection of personal and all this kind of approach. You didn't start with a conventional product line, so to speak. You're in the CBD world. So what advice can you pass along? You're a DTC, you're a retailer now, you're going direct to consumer, you're a brand, you're all these great things. What advice can you pass along to retailers who are listening and thinking about, how to build a successful narrative around your product, and then how to build volume and how to move product, how to build sales?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did have some e-commerce experience, so I think that definitely gave me a little bit of comfort entering into this space, having used a lot of the platforms that we use now. But I will say, I don't think I realized or could have predicted how difficult this industry is and really how restricted it is on the hemp side, which is federally legal. You got to have tough skin. You definitely have to be okay with a lot of no's and with a lot of declined bank accounts or payment processors. It's getting a little bit easier now, but it is very restricted. And especially if you're someone who wants to raise money, which I had never done before. So that was a little daunting for me. And I had a steep learning curve. They say for about every 100 no's, you might get one yes, which is definitely true. So again, I think the athlete in me, the thick skin, that kind of
experience with that.
Yeah.
And you and I were just talking off mic. We know someone in common, the great Kate Delhagen, as someone who you might turn to for a piece of advice. I work with Kate many years ago with Forrester, and we touch base every now and then. So that's someone in your corner that that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes back to what I was saying about building your team. No matter what industry, but especially the cannabis industry, because there's a lot of money and there's a lot of people coming in this industry, and some people for the right reasons, some people for the wrong reasons. And you gotta build your allies, and you need to build your team of people that you trust, that can give you really good advice, both on building the brand or, whether it's D2C, wholesale, your product line. You need a partner and an ally kind of in every facet of the business. And, again, especially for cannabis, because there are just a ton of people flooding in this industry, and it's hard to know who to trust. And everyone's kind of doing it differently too. Mindy has taken a completely different approach than a lot of other companies. And, some people gave us the advice that this wasn't very smart, and other people like Kate Delhagen, the Oregon Sports Angel Group, they love what we were doing, and they loved our approach of building the brand first and then slowly building out our product line.
Last question for you. As we talk today, we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. We'll probably be in some way, shape, or form in an environment that we'll be talking about COVID for months, if not longer. So, we're clearly not operating in a standard business environment, a business that's unusual. I've talked about it. Talk about your early thoughts, because these are early days, about how that's changed how you think about the brand or how you go to market. Any thoughts or experiences in the past couple of weeks, or as you think forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mindy has really positioned ourselves well to withstand something like this, again, because our focus was more so to build our brand and build our community first, and then our product line second. I think anytime you are building a business, right, where a CPG business or a business where you're trying to gather a community of people, it is really important to have a brand that resonates with, maybe not like, you don't need it to resonate with the masses, but you need it to resonate with a very specific niche of people and get traction. And that traction is going to build over time. And that was a piece of advice that we got really early on from one of the founders of PI, which is an incubator group in Portland. We knew that we could get traction in women's soccer. And even though the NWSL is a small league and it doesn't have a huge audience, he said, you know what, if that is where you can get traction, go with that first, because then you have the buy-in from those athletes and that community of people, and it's only going to grow from there. And I think our worry was that it just wasn't big enough. And so far it's panned out. And that would be the advice that I'd give to people is, if you really want to build something that has legs, don't worry about being liked by everyone. You just need to be liked a lot by a small group of people that are going to come back and continue to buy your products, and that you can, engage with them. And then that group will slowly build. And I think that for right now, especially in the midst of COVID-19 and all this crazy stuff going on, we're seeing the fruits of that labor with Mindy. We started very small and we wanted to get traction from a specific group of people. And now we're able to see the growth of that, and our audience is getting bigger every day. And we're in a good place. We're set up to withstand this, I think.
Well, if my listeners want to learn more about you or learn more about Mindy, the products, now I have listeners on both sides of the border. Most are in Canada, and CBD actually is still prohibited here, or prohibited from a general sale perspective. The U.S. is actually ahead of us in that regard. But in any event, how can people learn more about you and your brand and just delve into your brand story a little bit more?
Yeah, so if people want to learn more about Mindy, which I hope that you do, you can visit our website at www.themindyco.com. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see all the links to our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram handles, which are just at themindyco.com. My personal handle is just at rrapino.com. But yeah, visit our website, sign up for our email list. Our email community is growing at a very fast rate, which is very exciting. We give a lot of incentive to be on the email list, first dibs at athlete content, product launches, promos, you name it. Email subscribers are very important to us, and we have a loyalty program that we're rolling out as well. So visit the website, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, to stay up to date on all things Mindy.
Well, congratulations on everything you've accomplished. It's really a great story, and clearly you're a savvy operator in an environment that keeps changing. So again, congratulations, and thanks for being on The Voice of Retail and sharing your story and joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about Mindy, and let's stay in touch. I'd love to come back on as things continue to grow.
Well, thanks to Nadia, Sucharita, and Rachel for being my guests in this episode. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of ME LeBlanc and Company Inc. You can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.